I'm loud.
A little bit.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. Hold on. All right. I think let me just check to make sure it is live. All right, good. It is. It is. It is. So you're live, I'm live. Um all right. So we'll give a couple people a little bit of an opportunity to come on. If you're on,
What people? You was inviting people? I thought it was just me and you.
it's super loud. All right. So you because because we're live, people will have the opportunity to join on. So right now it's 5 people on that are actually watching it. So you'll be able to kind of interact with people or whatever. So I can't really see who's on.
I
Hi,
can.
Danielle. My friend Danielle is on. She says she's on. She says she knows this is gonna be good. All right, so so guys, this is my mom. I asked her to join me on a live video tonight because she's just very wise in a lot of different ways, but we've been talking a lot about mother daughter relationships, and really I think it's just family relationships. And we were just having a conversation today, and these are the kind of conversations that I feel like I wish that we could just have in a larger audience. So I wanted to give us the opportunity to really be able to talk to you about it. I want to let you introduce yourself because I don't want to introduce you for you. So just tell everybody who you are, what you do.
So hi. My name is Claudette Robinson Thorpe, and I am Cheezette's mom. I am also a social worker for 40 plus years, and I work at an alternative school during the day. I sell real estate. I do a bunch of things. Try to keep that energy going and that passive income going. So I'm in school right now for my doctorate. So
Yes.
my plate right now. But God is good and He's not gonna give me more than I can handle. So
And after about a year, we'll be calling you Dr. Claudette, or we're
Doc-
going to call you Dr. Cleo.
Dr. Robinson Thorpe,
Okay. All right. Excuse me.
one
All
year
right.
from today.
So the reason why I kind of, well, first of all, I know a lot of people always ask me, how did I kind of become the person that I am? And really, I am a spitting image of my mother, more probably than I realize. But we are a lot alike, right? So I'm grateful for the influence that you set for me. But what I really wanted to talk about is we have a great relationship. I think we've always had a great relationship, but I think our relationship too has been through some trials and tribulations, and I'm thankful for where we are. But I wanted to talk about this situation, and I was talking to you about it earlier with mothers and daughters, especially, right?
Right.
And when I say like mothers and daughters, I recently, and do you remember that I did that video on honor? It was about 2 years ago, maybe, and I did it in the huh?
What video?
I did it on honor
Okay.
in the Secret Wives Society group. But the reason why I did that video is because God had just really begun to deal with me, and I teach this to my kids now, and dealing with women, especially women in business. So coaching women in business, a lot of them come to me and they have issues with their mothers,
Right.
right? And but they have this strong faith for what they can do in business. They have strong faith for what they can accomplish as wives, and they're just kind of like this strong, is strong, not strong like superhuman, but just they're able to be resilient and overcome in every area. But when it comes to the relationships, a lot of time with their mother, they struggle, right? And I'm coaching one lady in particular right now, and she, is really struggling because her mother is kind of toxic, for lack of a better word. Her mother is, and she does things to her that hurt her often. And she has just kind of at this point written her mother off. And I remember something that you always used to say to me, And I never understood it until I got to be a mother. And you always say that to me too. You'd be like, it's just certain things you ain't going to understand until you have kids. But I'm starting to understand it now that you only get one mother. But
Exactly.
what I wanted to say to you is, while I agree with that, I always too felt like just because I only get one mother doesn't give that mother the ability to be toxic to me, right? Or to damage me emotionally. So you're a social worker, so you see this thing from the both perspectives. What is your take on a relationship with a mother and daughter when they're adults like you and I are, but they struggle to be in a healthy relationship? What is your take on that? First as a mom and then as a social worker.
Well, what about not just a mom and as a social worker, but as a Christian?
You're right, right. Yeah, that's more important.
Yeah, so that's more important. And I think over time, I think a lot of it has to do with maturity. I think people have to grow into a place where they're comfortable at being their self and accepting people for who they are. And I
Right.
think you can't do that until you mature enough, because I always told you only get one mother. And in the Bible it says honor thy mother, right? It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
say honor thy kids, it says honor thy mother. So you have to be respectful of your mother. You might not agree with everything that she says or do, but it's still your mother, and it's the only one you're going to get. So you have to find that balance somewhere where you can learn how to coexist, but
Mm-hmm.
also remembering that your mother brought you into this world. You wouldn't be here without her. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then what I think a lot of people don't understand, that with our mothers and our generation, the generation that I'm in, a lot of things we try to do better for our kids that we got for ourselves, because a lot of things we didn't get back in the day. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So
Mm-hmm.
you learn as you go and you try to make your kids better people. But sometimes adults, like um, mothers, don't get everything they did, the nurturing they need growing up, so they don't know how to nurture their kids.
Right.
You can't fault your mother for that. You can't fault her for something that she doesn't know how to do.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? What we could do is maybe try to help her or teach her, because if she didn't get it, she can't pass it on.
Right.
So sometimes toxic relationships happen because people can't do better until they know better. And
Right.
sometimes as your parents, I think the generation that we have now is doing a lot better with raising their kids and being better parents and being better um, partners and having relationships than we did back in the day. And back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
mothers was your way or no way. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think with maturity that changes too.
Right. One of the things though that I always admired about you, I never heard you say anything bad about your mother, but I've heard bad things said about her. But I've only heard you say good things.
Because that was my mother and I loved her unconditionally. And when you love somebody unconditionally, you take the good with the bad.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So, like a lot of me and my siblings grew up in the same house, and they see my mother one way and I see her another way. But at the end of
That.
the day, she was my mother. But everybody has different relationships with their parents. Like, do you remember when I told you, you used to always say to me, you and Blake was growing up, right? Jennifer and
Mm-hmm.
Alvin wasn't here yet. And you used to always say, I favor Blake.
Mm-hmm.
You used to always say that coming up. You was like 15, 13, 14, somewhere around there. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept saying, I said, you'll figure it out when you have kids.
You're
Because
right.
you don't realize is that each kid that you have, they're not, no two people are the same.
Right.
So your kids are going to be different. Each one needs something different. He needed
Right.
more than you did at the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but you didn't see it like that. What you seen was that I was spending more time with him than I was you. Now,
Right. Right.
what I know, when I did that, I was doing the best that I could do at the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Did it take a little away from you? It did, but not meaningful. I
Right.
didn't
Right. Right.
really mean to do it. You know what I'm
Right. Right.
saying?
Right.
It was just like you were able to stand up on your own 2 feet at the time, and he just needed a little more at the
Right.
time. But you both turned out okay.
And you know what though? But this is what I'm saying about things coming full circle, because my kids are the same way. And that's the same thing I have with them. So what I try to teach them about is this thing called, and this is what I'm saying about, I learned this from you. I tell them it's equitable parenting. equitable is different from equal.
Right.
You're not going to get equal from me, so don't even expect that from me. You're going to get equitable. Equitable means you get what you need, they get what they need, everybody has what they need. That's equitable. Everybody is taken care of.
Right.
Equal means what I do for one, I do for the other. I'm not doing that because
like
you can't. But here's what I really learned, and this is what I really wanted to talk about here. The reason why I brought her on is because I had to learn how to honor my mother in order for things to be well with me in my life. I honor my mother and I wouldn't be who I am without her. You know, there was a lot of things that she taught me or that you taught me just by being who you were. But I know that this generation, especially the generation of parents around my age, they tend to tout at their parents how they're doing better than them in their parenting. But you're not. You're really doing what God allowed you to learn through them, right? So my thing is they were still a conduit in your success.
Exactly.
And when you talked about the Bible, I tell my kids, especially women who are not with the fathers and fathers who are not with the mothers. The Bible says that in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, it says, honor your mother and father, that this is the first commandment with promise, and it will be well with you. So what happens when you dishonor your mother, when you dishonor your father? You don't get the promise of it being well with you, and it will not be well with you. So when I see people and they're not with the father and they're like, oh, he's a deadbeat, or he don't pay child support, or she's a deadbeat, all she do is go to the club, I'm like, you're positioning a seed of dishonor in your kid. And what happens is when your kid dishonors their parents, they dishonor God, because God is the one that gave you that parent. So when I look at you, like I look back and I'm grateful for the way you parented me, because I feel like you gave me what I needed. And I think that there was wisdom in that. And when I was a child, I didn't see that. When you're a child, you don't understand wisdom. Exactly. But now that I'm older, I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't have worked for me, because I know kind of what works for me and what doesn't. Like I remember you said to me, and because people will be like, well, why you don't have curfews? It just seemed like your mother let you do whatever you want. And I was like, I don't really feel like that. You was like, you gonna do what you want to do anyway. You was like, so what? I can't stop that. You was like, my job is just to make sure you got as much information, so when you out here making decisions, you know what to do.
Do you remember listening?
Oh God, what?
Okay. So when I asked you, did you want to get on birth control pills?
What I said?
And everybody kept saying, oh, you giving her permission to have sex? I said, no, I'm not giving her permission to have sex. I can't control her, and I can't see everything she's doing out there, but I'm gonna make sure she's safe and she's not gonna bring no kids home, because she doesn't need any kids right now. So
and we took that sexual education class.
Yeah.
So, and everybody was like, you took a sex education class with your mother? And you was like, listen, you was like, can't nobody in these streets tell you nothing that I can't tell you. I know everything. I done been through it all. I done seen it all. You better listen to me. And I'm telling you, it was people that was like, your mother told you that? I'm like, yeah, she told me a lot of stuff. But then now I look at the way I parent my kids, and how I parent my kids is I teach them how to make decisions on their own. But what you saw that I didn't see at the time, and I see it more now, I'm really going to always do my own thing anyway. Right. Like, I'm really not going to be a march to the beat of another person's drum kind of person anyway. So it was very wise of you to make sure at that age that I had enough information, because when I was out there doing my thing, it was always the conversations that we had, the things that you told me that would come back to me. But that's where honor is, I take what somebody is telling me and I esteem it, right? So you didn't realize a lot of times I listened to everything you said. It just took a while. It just took a lot of times me going out, making a mistake, and then having the information in the back of my head, like, okay, nope. Like, I tell people, I'm like, I bought my first two real estate houses, both multifamily investments, when I was 20 years old. I did that because I saw you do that.
Right.
And I tell people, as an adult, I don't think I've ever struggled financially, because you've always taught me how to budget money. I remember when I had a summer job and you wouldn't let me spend my paycheck, you would make me put the whole thing in the bank. And you'd be like, you don't need no money. I buy your clothes, I buy your food, your money can go in the bank. And I'll be like, but it's my money. Like, I want to go out and do stuff with it. And you'd be like, you don't need it. You just put it in the bank. And then when I got in my 20s and I started having like bigger amounts of money, I always would take it to the bank. And I just would never spend it. And people would be like, why you ain't spending no money? I'm like, I don't really need to. Like, what I need, I got food, I got clothes, I got shoes. Why I really need to spend money? But then I realized, but that also taught me delayed gratification.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, when I look at my life, I'm grateful that even in my disobedience, I return to honor you, and I return to honor you, and God kept his promise in that area. And the reason why I wanted to do this live with you, because like I said, I see a lot of women, they come to me, and one of the first things I want to know is, how's your relationship with your spouse? How's your relationship with your parents? Because these things affect how you go into business. Right. God is not going to honor your prayer to make you a millionaire if you won't even honor his request to honor your mother, right, and honor your father, and to honor your husband. And these are small things. The Bible says it's the small foxes that spoil the vine. So we all talking about manifestation and getting wealth and doing this, but God's really at the heart of relationships. This is about covenant and relationships going well. Right. And I would like to think that even at this stage in life, the way our relationship has transgressed is now we give life to each other. Right? So I learned from you, you learned from me, but that took me being humble enough to be able to know that. And this is what I tell my kids. I said, do you understand? And you helped me realize this. Your mother don't even have to be smart. God can give your parents wisdom for you. They don't have to know nothing else in the world. But when it comes to you, God will give them so much wisdom.
Yes.
And it's for you. It's for your benefit, right? So it's for your benefit. So it's like, if it's for your benefit, why not take advantage of it? Why not get the fullness of it? And this generation right here, right now, the children right now, the teenagers of today are so disobedient, so dishonorable to parents. And it has a lot to do with the parents, not really setting that firm example of making the kids honor them. Like I remember my grandmother, I would go to my grandmother and I would always try to just say like bad stuff about you. My grandmother be like, you need to pray for your mother. She'd be like, if she would get down on the floor with me, she'd be like, we get down here, we gonna pray, and we would fall asleep praying. I'm like, Lord. And to the point where I ain't even talk to her about you no more, because I'm like, if I say something, she gonna make me pray. I'm like,
because your grandmother was a wise woman. And I'm telling you, between your grandmother's prayers and my aunt and my sister's prayers, that's what kept me. You know what I'm saying? And people don't realize that the prayers is the things that keep you going. You know what I'm saying? And keep you in covenant with God and keep you safe.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that whatever path you go down, that's the path you were supposed to go down. I don't think nothing happened by happenstance. I think things happen that are supposed to happen in your life, and you're supposed to learn from them and keep it moving. And I mean, you know my story. You grew up with me. You know what I'm saying? So, but God has always had his hand on me. And did I detour for a minute? For sure I did. But I got back on that path. You know what I'm saying? And I've never wanted for anything, because I've always honored my mother and my father.
You did.
And even though I was not, like I grew up in the church, and then I fell away from the church, and then I got back into it, but I've never disrespected my parents.
And I remember I was a disrespectful little snot. I know. And you would say to me,
"You were a brat."
Huh?
You were a brat.
I was not spoiled.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. But maybe a little. But you would, I remember you would say to me, who told you to be disrespectful like that? Like, why do you think that's okay? And I remember being like, because I can do what I want. Like, but I'm telling you, Jamie said, I think seeing Pete and repeat God's perfection from generation to generation. He's saying we look a lot alike. But I remember, during those times that you would always say you would always honor people, like especially older people. You were always very respectful. And you used to be like, where did you get that from? Like, why do you act like that?
But that
And
came from the streets. That's why I used to always try to make sure you knew a lot, because I knew you were getting a lot of information from the streets too. And then,
mhm,
okay, let's go another way forward. If you want to go way back a little bit.
mhm,
You remember, and this guy you were messing with, and I couldn't stand him. Then knew he wasn't good for you, but what I realized after time, it was like, if I didn't embrace him, I was gonna lose my daughter.
mm,
So there was things that people would say, well, why would you do that? But guess what? My daughter, she's at Cowan, turned out very well. So everything I did, I don't regret anything I did to bring you up.
right.
You turned out to be a now it's to the place where you, as being my daughter, I learn from you now.
Mm.
So it's like it's a good feeling that you can go to your kids and learn things.
Right. And I look forward to that with my daughter. And I look at how I'm raising her, and I'm like, I feel like I'm raising her not from a place of brokenness or of trying to be something that my mother was or was not. I feel like I'm really taking in the values that were instilled in me and really trying to put them into her. Right. And that's really important, because what happens when you dishonor your parents, you miss the value of the lessons that they tried to teach you. You miss the wisdom. So when you're parenting your kids, you're parenting them from hurt, right? And then I just got to say this. The reason why there's a thing called inner vows and bitter root judgments. In a lot of people that have been hurt as children, we take these inner vows. So an inner vow is an example of, if you were broke, and then you vow in your heart that when you get older, you're never going to be broke again, right? That's an inner vow. You made like that's a promise you made to yourself. And it's an unhealthy promise, because the reason why it's a bitter root judgment, because you're really standing in judgment of your parents for not having good finances.
Right.
And you're saying that you didn't do that right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to never be broke. And what happens is you become God over that area. So God can't even lead you and guide you in that area. And that vow is so strong that it has to be broken. This is why a lot of women are single, because they saw their parents in bad relationships and they vowed that nobody was ever going to hurt them like that. And then because nobody could hurt you, nobody could also love you. Right. So then what happens is your parents were on this side of the spectrum, and then you get all the way on this side of the spectrum, but the balance is really supposed to be here, right? Wherever your parents were, there was a lesson in that, and you were supposed to see them in their God sense and not their humanity, because God chose your parents for a reason. So if you really look at your parents and you say, you know what, you did a horrible job raising me, in essence, what you're saying is, God, you chose a bad person. You did a bad job, because your parents didn't.
That doesn't happen.
Right. Your parents didn't just become your parents because they just happened to meet. All of that was divinely orchestrated before the foundation of the world. God knew who your mother was going to be. God knew who your father was going to be. But what happens is the enemy wants you to be in a place of dishonor, because he doesn't want it to be well with you. Right. The only thing I do in life is honor the people that God has told me to honor, and my mother is one of them. And even you guys will probably see Pastor D come on here when we start going through this series or whatever. But the reason why Pastor D was so important in my life, because Pastor D helped me really know. Remember, you asked me earlier, you said, how did it take somebody else for you to realize that? You know what it was? She helped me realize all of the good things about me.
Right.
And then she helped me realize that the good things about you are the best parts about her. Right. So then I began to look at myself differently. And then because I looked at myself differently, I could look at what was poured into me to make me who I am.
Exactly.
That was the real changer for me. A lot of times we need somebody else that's anointed to show us ourselves. Right. Because she helped me see myself in a different way. And when I saw myself, I had no choice but to see you. And I always tell women, if you want to conquer yourself, if you're struggling in life, if you're struggling with a lot of these emotional feelings, depression, all this stuff, go back and learn, study your mother. Because most of the things that your parents are struggling with are probably the same things that you're struggling with. You just haven't had those conversations, right? Because those conversations open up a lot, right? Those conversations open up a lot. Just like you and I both have struggled, with our past with addictions. I've learned a lot just listening to your story, listening to your mother's story, and then listening to now, okay, I know this is a trait. I know this is going to come from my kids some way, right? So I listen, I'm not acting like, oh, we're raising perfect people over here. I already know what's coming for them. But at the end of the day, this is why I'm raising them to put God first. I'm sowing the word in them because the word is going to keep them when hell tries to come against them. I'm teaching them to honor the right people so that God can cover them and that they're not. Dishonor leads to disobedience, so that they're never in a place of disobedience. I want them to have a humble heart so that they can be turned back to God a lot quicker, right? So those things are important to me. And how does all this tie into business? A lot of times God can't bless you because these are blind spots in your life. Like when I see these women and I'm like, how you ain't talked to your mother in 7 years?
Which is unacceptable.
Unacceptable. And I'm like, listen, I get it. I get that they may have done. You can keep people at a distance, but this is the woman that brought you into the world. Like, this is the woman that labored for you, the woman that gave up things for you. And you can at least say, you know what? This is where I draw the line, but I'm still going to honor you as much as I can.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So
piece to your life too. And what people don't realize is that by doing that, you are honoring God, and God will cover you. And
yes, He will.
A lot of people don't understand that because, like you said, I've seen Christians that call themselves Christians and have blind spots to that. And if you're a true Christian, you know in the Bible it says honor thy mother. So how do you be a Christian and say, "Oh, I'm not talking to her for 7 years"?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's not godlike.
Right.
At the end of the day, you can agree to disagree and you can get along at a distance, but you still need to make sure that you respect and honor your mother and your father.
Anytime you dishonor people, it is to protect you. It's because it hurts you to be in relationship with them and you don't want to hurt. So whatever is hurting you, we have a tendency or a propensity to push it away, right? Because it hurts us. But at the end of the day, the part that's hurting is probably the part that needs the most healing, right? And that's why God is saying honor your mother and father, because if there's hurt there, that means there's healing that's available in that place, right? So when I look at, you still talk about this letter that I wrote you. I pray to God that you have burned that letter and you don't have that letter. You really should. You really should.
Listen, that letter, I don't even think about that letter until you bring it up anymore.
Okay, but you shouldn't even have it.
It's just in a bunch of other stuff, like my pictures and everything else. But you've got to know, that's what I'm saying. She does honor her mother and father, but it's not like we've been in bad places sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But we've all managed to get back where the place we need to be. But it has happened in this particular time. She wrote a letter telling me how much she hated me. That letter.
How old was I when I wrote that letter? Probably 14 or 15.
I think you might have been 13 or 14 when you wrote the letter.
Get rid of that letter. I am freaking 42 years old.
So you remember the letter?
I remember the letter because it probably was like 5 years ago. And you was like, you remember that letter you wrote to me? I was like, tell me you do not still have that letter. You was like, yes, I do. I'm like, get rid of that letter. Like, that letter does not need to even exist.
How sometimes kids, when they're young, they say the meaningful, hurtful things to their parents. You know what I'm saying? But that's a part of growing up and becoming who you are, But that's what you was feeling at that time.
Right.
And it was
How did,
okay
how
because
did you,
at that
how
time,
did you,
I was in a good place either. So I probably deserved it at that time.
how did you deal with that?
What do you mean? How do I deal with that?
How did you deal with me? Woo, I was the woo.
You weren't that bad.
I
You
was
really
I was
weren't.
mean though to you.
Yeah, because I think you were jealous. You were jealous. You wanted all my attention always. But I gotta say, your grandmother too, like she's a really honorable woman. And if it wasn't for her, I believe her prayers and your prayers is what kept me going. I do believe that
Yeah,
wholeheartedly.
that woman.
And
All
she
she did
never
was
let you
pray.
talk bad about me under no circumstances. She would not, nobody talk bad about me.
Yeah, you start talking about people, she get quiet. She be like, but
Yeah,
I'm grateful for her because a lot of the things that you evidenced or that you did, that you lived, that you witnessed, that you actually went through, she gave me the biblical understanding to them. So it was like I saw it in action with you, but I didn't really understand it. And she kind of gave me like the Bible side of it to help me understand. Like
right.
one of the things that I tell people, like when I tell people I get stuff done, I get stuff done. Like if you give it to me, I'm gonna get it done.
And
You get stuff done.
yeah,
You got a whole list. You like, I get stuff done. And I'm like, listen, I don't know how to be no other way but like this because that's how I was raised.
right, right,
And then, I was talking to Carrie the other night about putting stuff off. I'm like, I don't put stuff off.
right.
If you give it to me to do, I'm probably gonna do it now because I don't put stuff off. I've never put stuff off. Anything I can do now, I'm gonna always do now.
So let me tell you a good example of that. So I'm in a doctorate program, and
Mm-hmm.
my paper was due tonight. Matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
and my paper was given to them last Wednesday. And so my professor, the professor that we have, she got on Zoom and said, she handed her paper a week early because I can't keep stuff on my plate. I got too many
I
things.
got too much stuff on my plate. I just need to get it off my plate.
And I
Right.
got to move it, so I move it as quickly as possible. And that's what I always taught y'all. Don't I hate procrastinators.
I hate procrastinators too. I'm telling you, we
You know,
just
I feel
alike.
but I also got to remember too, and I try to remember a lot of times people don't move the way I move. So sometimes I gotta back up and I gotta move a little slower because the other person might not be moving at the pace I'm moving at. But if it's anything that I'm handling for me, oh, it's gonna get handled.
Me too. And I was saying, and that's the prime thing I was saying to Carrie last night. I said, it's not that I'm trying to move fast. I just got a lot of stuff on my plate. And if I could go ahead and shift some stuff off, I will go ahead and shift it off. Joy said, "Don't hate me." Why you say that? She said you must be a procrastinator. But I think that for me, I think one of the best lessons that you taught me and that has worked well for me most is understanding that whatever you're working on could take years to manifest, but you just still have to keep doing it until it manifests. And I think me going to college was a good example of that, because it took 4 years to graduate. And at some point in your years in the middle, you kind of feel like, well, is it ever going to happen? Because it's so far out. But the fact that I graduated, it showed me the fact that it took 4 years to accomplish something that happened in one day.
Right, but remember, they wouldn't even let you out of high school unless you went to college. Remember, because you got out a year early.
Right.
So, and that was the deal that we made with the school system, that because you graduated before everybody else. You graduated at 16 when people was graduating 17 and 18.
Right.
And you had to go to college, but we thought you were kind of young. But at the end of the day, that was the only way you were going to get out of school.
I was actually 15. I turned 16. No, I was 16.
I was 16.
Yeah. Because I had my license.
And then you went to college. You were still 16 when you went to college the first year.
Right. Because I had my master's at 21.
Right. So.
And that alone, like I didn't want to go to college. Just so you know, I didn't want to go to college.
But I wanted you away from New Haven. So it was
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I just went because you wanted me to go. Like, I didn't really care about that. Like, that wasn't my thing. And then I stayed because it was like, well, what else am I gonna do? Like, I ain't doing nothing else. Like, I didn't have anything else to do. And I was like, well, ain't nobody bothering me when I'm here. Like, ain't nobody expecting much of me other than to go to class. And, I was like, I'll just do it. And then when I graduated, that really was something that I was like, okay, I'm glad I did that. Right. But I regret, well, not that I regret. If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have left high school early. I would have stayed and graduated with my class. And I say that, I think you and I both just wanted me to leave because it was just kind of getting crazy around that time with just everything going on with my life. And
it seemed like it was a better place for you during that time.
Yeah, it seemed like it was bad. So I kind of felt like I had to go just to stay safe, and just not lose my mind or make you lose your mind, whatever. But I felt like when I was there, I kind of felt like I was there because you wanted me to be there initially. I didn't really know why I was there. Like, I knew I could do the work. I wasn't really worried about that. It was just like, why am I really here? And then I started to develop friendships and meet people. And it was like the best 4 years of my life. I tell people, I think college, especially if you go away to college at a young age, like not going back to school when you got kids and responsibilities. So then it's kind of like annoying, or not annoying, but it's a lot on your plate. But when you don't have any real bills, any real responsibility, it was the best 4 years of my life. And I actually am glad I went. Right. But those are the things that when I said I honored you, I went because you was like, I really want you to leave. Like, I really want you to get out of here. And I just was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm about to be somebody's baby mama. Like, I was like, that's where I'm at with this. I'm about to be somebody's baby mama.
And that's why I wanted you to leave.
Yeah, I was like, I was right there, like right there. And but again, I'm just grateful that I at least was like, okay, let me see where she's coming from. So she's asking me to do this. I was like, I'll at least try it. I'll at least try it and see how it worked. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew I was going to finish the first year, because they said if I didn't finish the first year, then I'd have to go back to high school and finish that year of high school. So I knew I was going to finish the first year, because I was not going back to high school after I left. But then after I left, it was like everybody was like shocked. Like, they was like, you went to college? Like, I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, wow. Like, and then it was like everybody was really like proud of me. Like, and I was like, well, dang, now I feel like, Tyrone from the hood. I can't let everybody down. Like, So it was just a great, but I just wanted to have you come on because I wanted people to see, they probably don't know the history, but I'm sure they can tell from these comments how our relationship evolved, because it was really bad for a while. And then and then God did the healing in our relationship, and he's healed both of us individually so that we can bring our best versions of ourselves to this relationship. But I think that it also has helped both of us in business, because we share a lot of business advice from each other. Right. So that's it. That's all I have. She was like, what are we going to talk about? Who going to be on? I don't know what I'm going to say, but that's all I wanted you to say. I just want people to understand that whatever is going on with your relationship with your parents, even your spouse, the people that God have told you to honor, God still expects you to honor them.
Right.
You don't get a pass for doing what God has told you to do. And the fact that you are in God's face day and night praying for God to prosper your business, but not in his face day and night asking him to prosper your relationship. He's concerned about the relationship more than he is concerned about your business. So
people don't realize it takes a lot of energy to not honor your mother and father. It takes energy to be mad at them and not having a relationship with them, where that's stuck in your growth, not theirs.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, well, it doesn't even bother me. She just kind of does. I don't believe that either.
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. But for me, I think, like I said, I think it's a wound for people that they just don't want to deal with. but they want to build strong relationships with people in business. And I don't really want to do business with people that don't have strong relationships with their spouses and with their parents and with their family. Because my thing is, if you can dishonor them, I don't stand a chance.
Sure don't.
Especially like even with a man, I tell somebody, I'm like, if a man can dishonor his mother, you don't have a chance. Period. Like there is no exception. She is the one that sacrificed for him in a way that you never will. If he can't honor her, it's only a short amount of time before he's dishonoring you. And
Right.
it goes the same way for a woman. Like if I just need to see people, I don't need to see perfection, but I need to see you at least trying, right? At least trying to honor God, because God will come in and meet you at your point of faith where you're trying. And I'm, like I said, I'm grateful for our relationship. I'm grateful for, just everything that you taught me. I would not be who I am without you. And that's what I'm saying. I think when you really start to love yourself and you really start to look at and not, I'm a strength finders person. So I'm not dealing with a whole bunch of weaknesses. The weaknesses is leveraging God. It's the strength. So when I started to really look at all the things that I think make me who I am and that make me a good person, I'm like, a lot of that came from my mother, from my grandmother, from my Aunt D, from, the people that God used to raise me. And I'm grateful for, like, you leading the charge and just being a good example, because you're a strong woman, I tell you.
I know, but we also too got to give kudos to Pastor D too, because I mean,
Yeah.
Pastor D has brought us together in a great way, and
Yeah, she has.
she's very wise. And people that are struggling with like relationships with their parents, she's somebody that they should reach out to, because she's
Yeah.
wise when it comes to that area.
And I remember she said to you, she said, I'm not your competition. And
Right.
she really meant that, because she knows the anointing that she carries. She was like, I'm just here to show her the best parts of her and give you the credit. She was like, I'm
Right.
just moving into a place that you set up. Like, and she's always been very clear about who set up, who steps in. And
Right.
that is something that people have to understand, that when you meet a good person, if you can look at your spouse and say that there is anything good about them, and you can't look at their parents and say that their parents are good people too, you are deceived.
Right.
Because they are the product of somebody that raised them well.
Right.
I don't care what it looks like. They may have see, people get character and personality mixed up. Character is just who you are at the core. Your personality is just how you manifest it. It's like whether it's hot or cold. Everybody has a personality. Just because some people are just naturally moody,
Right.
it doesn't make them a bad person. You don't have to tolerate the mood swings, but they can still be good people. So
Right.
what I'm saying is, when you look at a spouse, you should be able to know what kind of quality and stock that they come from. Period. Because you always say to me, if you want to see what a woman gonna look like when she get old, look at her mama. And you get, I'm fine.
Yeah, you believe that though.
You do. Then I'll be like, Mom, well, she used to be skinny. Well, she ain't gonna be skinny for long, because you see her mother. I'm like, Mom.
No,
Well,
we all gain pounds as we get older, but yeah.
well, you were looking really good in your life. So,
But I hope this helped somebody.
yes.
Yeah, I hope that whoever's listening, that it's just that if you believe in God, He will work it all out for you. And you're saying a lot of things that I taught you. What you taught me is how to really bring my faith to another level.
Mm.
Because it wasn't until like I was brought up in the church, left the church, came back, and then the light bulb went off when I was about 35 to come back into God's fold. And I know I can't do anything without Him. I don't do anything without Him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think anybody that's struggling with a relationship with their parents, it just needs to be worked out for everybody concerned. And I think that it would bring people peace that doesn't even realize that there's the issue, because like you said, people will say, oh, I'm okay with it. No, you're not.
You're really not.
No, you're not.
And that's what the enemy wants to make you think you're okay with it, but it really is oozing out in every other area of your life. And then I just want to leave with this because this is something you said to me a long time ago, too. And this kind of ties in. You used to work in child protective services, and you would say to me, because, by law, technically, people be like, well, the parent's doing drugs, so we need to remove the kid from the environment. And you was like, I don't think that's the best course of action. Like, I think we need to get services for the parents and leave the kids at home.
Right.
And you would be like, I don't care how bad a mother is, the kids still always want to be with their mother.
Exactly. I have removed kids from their homes, and people doesn't realize no matter your mom could be a bum in the streets, but that kid, that's their mom. And no matter what they do, you removing them, that just hurts that kid even more. It just tears up the family when you can try to put services in and keep that family together.
Mm-hmm.
Because, even with adopted kids, people don't realize, people will lie and say, don't tell kids that they're adopted, and just raise them as their own. That's all well and good. But when that kid get of age, most kids is going back to their family because that's their connection.
I agree.
People don't understand that. Like even adopted kids, they'll go look for because they feel like there's a piece missing.
Right.
So that's why I think when adoption should always be open, so people should be aware of where they come from. Everybody wants to know where they came from.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I just remember, when you said that to me, and I was like, well, why is it always, the system's first course is to remove the kids? Right. And they're like, okay, but the parent is, and you always said, well, if they're not abusing them and that, they're not doing anything to harm them, it's best to keep them together because then they won't have to have that piece to put together too.
Right.
Right. And a lot of times the parents they don't know what to do because nobody's really stepping out to teach them.
Right.
Right. So when you said that a lot of things that you had to learn on your own, your mother passed when you were very young.
Right.
So like I'm raising my kids and I can still come to you and ask questions. I can still come to you and get stories from when I was young. I can still come to you and get insight, but you didn't have that.
Right. And what people don't realize that, like, that's a part of me that sometimes it hurts because people will talk about their great parents, their grandparents, and up the ladder. And if you don't have that point of reference, it's kind of, that's why it's good for family to always stay together and for you to know your heritage and know where you come from and know who your grandparents and your great grandparents are. I didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? And that's something I miss. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't have that reference. Because everybody died when I was young.
Right.
So,
and I remember when I really knew that your parents were important to you. Your mother died before I was born. So right. A couple years before I was born. And
I was 17 when she died.
Huh?
I was 17 when she died. You was born at 22.
Okay, right. So 5 years. But so so she died when you were 17. I think you were probably maybe 35. I probably was like 15 years old. And I came in the house and you were crying. You were like, I really miss my mother. And I'm like, it's been like 25 years. And you were like, you just don't forget that. She was like, you were like, you never forget your mother. And I was like, man, I mean, like, I had no reference point. I don't think I had, it was more than I could understand at the time. But as you get older and you start to see how family dynamics change, you realize that these are times that you're never going to get back. So while you're arguing with your mother and letting small stuff come in between you, there is somebody that is totally missing their mother, that would give their right arm just to be able to have a conversation with their mother again. And that's one of the reasons that God is giving you this time and space to get that relationship back in order, so you don't have to have any regrets. Our life is not promised. So while you're thinking that I'm going to wait until she changed to come into a good relationship with her, they may not be here tomorrow.
Right. And they have changed. So sometimes you just got to accept people for who they are. You know what I'm saying? Just like most people want to be accepted for who they are.
I agree.
So you have to, even if you need to like love from a distance, but you still have to accept them, especially because you don't want it to be too late. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I'm definitely grateful.
They have a strained relationship with a parent, and the parent dies. They wish they had have done something before they died.
Right.
So you anybody that's listening to this podcast and they have a strained relationship with their parents, they should try to rectify it.
I agree. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. Look at you. You didn't even want to be on. I'm sorry I kept you 50 minutes. She said, I got stuff to do. I was like, all right, yeah, all right, Ma. She's like, I got stuff to do. But yeah, so I'm super excited. I'm glad that you were on with me. I really appreciate you. And I will let you get your sleep, and I'm going to do the same. And that's it.
All right.
I appreciate you. And you can stay on. I'm gonna just end this, but you can stay on, okay? Oh, Sharon said, you see Sharon's comment? She said,
who's that? Oh, Miss Sherry.
Yeah. Yeah. We appreciate. Oh, look at this one. Look at this one. Donnie. Love you, cousin. All right, Ma, I'm gonna end this, but you stay on, okay? Don't hang up. Okay.